Okay, awesome. Welcome to week 2 of the Ideal Planning Method. Last week, we talked about desire mapping and the importance of aligning your goals with your desires. If you missed last week, you can see the recording on the Inspiration Community website or also on the Wildly Digital YouTube channel. I'll be posting the recordings there every week. So if you miss one, you can definitely follow up there. This week, we're going to dig into ideal planning for your week. So building your ideal month and building your ideal week, which essentially goes into building your ideal day. So I thought I would start by showing you an outdated version of my schedule. So this schedule has been what has guided me, I would say, probably for the last year. So to lead by example, I'm going to be updating my ideal plan while we go through this process. You guys can see the changes that can happen from my existing schedule to the schedule that I have now, because things constantly change. So what I was talking about last week and what you'll start to notice once you're implementing some of these structures is that you make a plan and then you recognize that things are working and aren't working. So when we're building our ideal plan, it's really important to think about yourself at the core. So most of the time we're like, okay, our business goals matter most, what we need to get done, our productivity, those take priority. We're going to flip the switch on that. We're going to start by recognizing the time that you have for yourself. So I'm going to quickly share my screen once this loads. Okay, so you guys can see what I'm looking at? Perfect. So there's a few terms that you'll hear me use when I'm talking about how to build your schedule. The first is go with the flow, or GWTF, which sometimes I find funny because it's like, the other way of saying WTF. Always makes me laugh. But going with the flow. So going with the flow days are days where you allow the natural course of your life to just be. So I've had clients that have used go with the flow days as whole days. That's what I like to do. I have people that do sections of their day as go with the flow. And going with the flow allows yourself to kind of live naturally within the realm of your life. So most of the time we put like free day, which is totally up to you to see how you want to use it. But a free day is really about you. So a free day is when you want to be relaxing, rejuvenating, focusing on yourself, focusing on your family. You're free from any obligation. A go with the flow day is when you allow yourself to go with the flow. If something from work comes up, there's a deadline that you need to meet, you need an extra day of work because your week got too busy, or you need a couple of extra hours because life gets busy, go with the flow is a good foundationary time frame to put into sections of your day where you don't have a meeting, you don't have something that you wanted to have planned, and you don't really have maybe like you don't want to be off either. Like, it's not like you want to be like on like at the beach. You could use a go with the flow time as going to the beach, or going and sitting under a tree, or going to the river, or going shopping, going to the mall, going to a movie, doing whatever you want. But it allows you to go with the natural flow of what's happening within your week and within your month. GYST days, so GYST, stands for get your shit together. So get your shit together days are days where you focus on fixing things that are happening in your life. So a good example of a get your shit together day would be meal prepping, organizing your closet, purging clothes from your toddler. I'm pulling a lot from like my own personal life right now. It could be planning for your week for work, if that's something that you need to get your shit together around. But it really is more focused on like the household task. It could be even like the day that you decide to clean the whole house, or you decide you need to hire a cleaning lady because you still don't have time. You can make those decisions on get your shit together days. And then, like I said, the free day is the day that's about you. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to work through, and I'm going to give each of you this template as well. So once I go through the instructions, then you guys are each going to get a copy of this. I'm going to throw it in the group chat, and it'll be your copy. It is a template, so you're going to have to share. You're going to have to copy it and make your own version of it. Please don't work within my template. If you do, it's not a big deal. I can fix it. But ideally, this is a template we want to be making our own. So what you're going to do is you want to start with your month. So you're going to lay out which days are your work days, which days are your day administration days, and which days are your free days. This is essential for monthly planning in order for your week plan and your day-to-day plan to actually function. Most of the time we get stuck in this mindset of, oh, I got to plan my day. My day needs to be organized. And we think about, okay, what am I going to get done next week? But when we pull back and we look at it from a really high level structure, what's happening within your month dictates what's happening within your week and dictates what's happening within your day. The second thing is picking your planning weeks versus your execution weeks. So especially in business, it's really important to have a balance between planning and execution. Some people get really stuck in the execution, which we call like being in the weeds or being too in your business, where like you can't actually see what's happening around your business or the progression of your business. And some people get stuck in the planning where they plan and they plan and they plan, but they don't ever actually execute on anything. So by organizing your weeks as, say, the first week of the month is a planning week and the next 3 weeks are execution weeks, or rotating, I like to rotate. I do a planning week, then an execution week, then a planning week and an execution week. And what that works for me as well, and what I encourage others to follow, is that allows you to have a beginning of the month setup, a mid-month review, and an end of the month review as well going into your new month. So those are things we'll talk about down the line once we have the plan in place, but this is what gives you the structure and the foundation for it. The next thing is you're going to want to outline what your free days are first. This is where putting yourself first becomes your priority. Priority number one is you. What is going to be at least one day of the week that you give yourself free? As business owners, we tend to get into this mindset where every minute matters, but sometimes we need a break. And it's okay to honor ourselves and put ourselves first and take that break. Honor that day off. Be in the essence of it. Allow yourself to get your mind off the business for a couple of minutes, especially if you have kids or grandkids or an extended family. Your family wants to spend time with you. And it's really important to them that you prioritize them as well. So identifying what the best free day is for you allows the structure of your schedule to open up. The next thing that you're going to want to choose are, if you want to take some of your free days and make them into go with the flow days or get your shit together days, you can do that as well. The next thing is you want to outline your priorities and your non-negotiables. So your priorities and your non-negotiables come into what are the non-negotiable things and my top priorities that I have on a daily, weekly basis. So that could be client meetings, recurring client meetings. That could be administrative meetings. That could be executive meetings if you're on an executive team or you have an executive structure in your business. That could be volunteer programs that you're a part of, or networking groups that you want to go to, or again, it could even be walk your dog or feed your cat or make dinner for your family. Have a morning routine, having an evening routine. Those are your non-negotiables and your priorities, because in order for you to live a fulfilled life that balances life and business, we have to put ourselves first. And then from there, you're going to outline your tasks per day. So try to keep it to a maximum or maintain the main 3 tasks per day for optimal output. You might be able to get more things done. You might have 7 things on your to-do list, but by prioritizing the top 3 things that you want to get done that day, and then again for that week, help you to compartmentalize the work that you're doing and not overburden yourself. So I'll give you an example of what that looks like. So let me just, how can I make this small enough that you guys can still see it without it being too small? Oops. Bear with me. Okay, so I think you guys can, I'm gonna try to make it just a little bit smaller. Okay, is that too small? Can you guys see that? No, that's fine. You can still see that. Okay, cool. So this kind of gives you like an overview. This is, again, this is a template. So this is an old version of a schedule that I personally had about 2.5 years ago that gives a good foundation of how to build out your strategy or build out your ideal month. So on the left-hand side, I have listed, is it a planning week or an execution week? So like I said, I do planning, execution, planning, because most months that have, well, all months have 30 or 31 days, but most months there are 5 weeks in your month versus 4 weeks. There might only be 3 days, like the first of the month might be on a Wednesday, but then that means that the month is going to end on a Tuesday, or sorry, a Monday. So depending on the month, it's best to look at it in 5-week sections versus a 4-week month, because if you do it in a 4-week month, you're going to get overwhelmed, because 4 weeks doesn't actually exist. All months, when you calculate a month, you calculate it by 4.5 instead of 4. We think about weeks and we think about a month in a 4-week span, but realistically, it actually ends up being 5. So that's why we do 4.5, because we meet halfway in the middle, which gives you an average of what your biweekly routine will turn into, or biweekly payments for payroll, like all of those things come into play with it. But for now, to focus on the foundation of what we're building, that's why we're doing 5 weeks. So you can personalize this as much as you want. There really are no rules. Like I said last week, everybody's going to be a little bit different. The same way that our desires change and the same way that we outline what our desires are is the same thing that's going to happen when we're putting together our ideal plan. So as you can see from here, when I had this plan, I take Sunday and Saturday off. I have a traditional weekend. I have a child, so I like to have a traditional weekend. So on Saturdays, it is technically categorized as a free day for me, but I utilize it mostly as a get your shit together day. So that day will be the day that there's household tasks that need to be done, cleaning, purging, getting rid of stuff, going grocery shopping, that kind of thing. Or it can be that my mental health really needs a break, and I get to get your shit together day could be me just laying on the couch watching TV. That's okay too. So at least I'm prioritizing that. And then during my execution week, I make that a go with the flow day. So I rotate the gist days and go with the flow days. Oh, I just noticed that this is, I must have pressed something, sorry. So yeah, so then I rotate them. So I get your shit together day, I go with the flow day. Get your shit together day, I go with the flow day, I get your shit together day. At this time, I was taking Wednesdays off. So I also rotated on those days. And I gave myself the freedom to do whatever I wanted. But if I wanted to do something, then I would also respect the go with the flow or the get your shit together. And then Sundays were like my free day where I gave myself some things that if I wanted to work on them, I could. I prioritized family visits. I prioritized prep, cooking, baking, because at that point I was obsessed with baking. And then I always made sure that I gave myself some time for weekly planning. Then from there, following the instructions, I had planning days, which are Mondays, a client day, which was Tuesday, a task day that was Thursday, and then an admin day that was Friday. So those are some examples of what you can do. And then if you look in the schedule itself, and you'll see this in the template, I have like what meeting I have, any task that I was doing for Wildly Digital. So at the time I was going live every Monday at 8 p.m. Then I would have a check-in day for one of my clients. So she was also doing her planning day. So we would align for that because that was a part of the contract that I had with her. And then I would personally do my weekly setup and my monthly setup at the beginning of the month on the first Monday of every month. Tuesday, mostly just client meetings. And if I didn't have client meetings, because those are only 3 hours of my day, I prioritized some tasks that I could focus on. So I'm not going to go through the whole month with you. You can kind of tell how that plays out. The other thing is that, like I said, there's bookending of the middle of the month review and end of the month review as well. So I think my mid-month kind of fell in the middle here. And then end of the month would be here, because it's again, like it's the repetitiveness of the fourth Monday, which means like that's a good day to do your wrap up of that month and a good time to think ahead about the new year. Or sorry, new month. If it is the new year, you should be thinking about the new year too. But again, like this just helps you to look high level at that plan. And then once you have your month in place, then you can move on to your week. So this gives you a brief structure to be thinking about your entire month as a snapshot. And then we zoom into the week and the day. So when you move on to your ideal week, you again want to outline the time that you'll be working and what time is your personal time on an individual daily basis as well. So what time are you starting work? What time are you taking lunch? What time are you ending work? What time are you eating dinner? And these are approximate, like not everybody's going to follow this perfectly, but at least you're thinking about these things. And then your nighttime, like, are you having a nighttime routine? Do you want it just to be, you don't have to think about anything, that it's no stress? Like, that's important to think about. The second thing is thinking about time blocking. So time block the amount of time you need to complete each task. Remember, the more time you give yourself for each block, the better. So most of the time we think about, okay, this task is going to take me 15 minutes to complete. If you only give yourself 15 minutes to complete that task, and then you put another task in on another 15-minute block, that's creating the environment where you're going to overwhelm yourself. I recommend giving at least 15 minutes extra for every time estimate that you make. So if, let's say that you think a task is going to take you an hour, give yourself at least an hour and 15 minutes. If not, double it. When in doubt, always double it. Because as we're building these routines and building these habits, we're going to notice if things actually take us the time that we think they're going to take us, or if they take more time or less time. Take your tasks, priorities, and non-negotiables from your ideal month and slot them into your day-to-day routine. Do that first by utilizing the time blocking method. So if you have a client meeting that, let's say, is an hour, schedule at least an hour and 15 minutes, ideally, in between your meetings, so that you have one meeting and then you have a 15-minute refresher. Give yourself that extra 15 minutes, because that extra 15 minutes, you might go over in the call. You might have to go to the bathroom. You might need a drink. Maybe you need a coffee. Maybe your dog needs to go outside. Who knows what can happen? But that extra 15 minutes means that you're less likely to be late for your next appointment. Make sure you had time in to eat. So like I already mentioned, scheduling lunch, but think about what time you want to be having breakfast and what time you want to be having dinner. And if you need snacks in the middle of the day, because some people do, schedule that in too. Schedule in a 15-minute break in the afternoon. Every employee, every job that you've had where you've been an employee, like think back to your high school days, you always had 2 15-minute breaks and then usually a lunch break, right? In your shift. If you're working 4 hours, you at least had one break. Put those breaks in there. If you're the type that you like to work and eat, That's okay too, but just make sure you are actually eating. And then add reflection time every day into your routine. That reflection time is to review your successes and honor how you can do better the next day. So you can take a look at the plan that you had for your day. How well did it go? Did you get everything done that you wanted to get done? What things came up for you? What things worked? What things didn't work? And that allows you to move into your planning for the next day more effectively. And then what you'll get is something that looks like this. So again, this is in the template. You can definitely make it your own. This is actually an example from another client that I had. She was a mom. So she had 4 kids, which obviously with 4 kids, you need some structure. So she had a good routine for her kids, but she wasn't prioritizing her. So she found that this template was really helpful for her to start to think about, okay, what time am I waking up in the morning? What am I doing with my morning time? What am I doing with my days? And then what am I doing from there? So for her schedule, she was really good at putting in the time slots for what she's going to do in the morning. She's going to get the kids up, then she was going to have breakfast, then she makes the lunches for the day. And then her Mondays, she would do video content, then she would have a meeting with me. Then she would do some content creation, and then she would pick up the kids from school, sorry. And then she would prep for dinner. She had her dinner. Then she gave herself a blank hour, which for her was her free time, or go with the flow time was what she was doing. So I'm actually just going to fill that in as code with the flow to give you an example. And then she allowed herself to have that hour to just be open. Then she would do her bedtime routine, had some time to herself, and then sleep. And because she was more focused on just the time that she had with the kids, she didn't have a lot of detail in her schedule. So that's why these slots are open. But again, you can plan in, like when you have this foundation of everything that you want to do for yourself, then you can plan in what you need to be doing based off of your monthly schedule into your week. So that's why they're blank here, is because the monthly schedule is my template, and this is just the idea of how she managed her own time, which is really the priority here. There's no right or wrong as far as how you utilize this time. Like you could start your workday at 8 o'clock and be done by 4 o'clock if that's what you want. It's just to give you an example. So the other thing that I'm going to show you, just to show you what the next level of result is, let me just share a different screen for a second, is that then you can also, if you're a digital person like I am, you can add this into your Google Calendar. So let me just make sure I'm sharing the right screen. So this is the digital version of my weekly template. Again, like I said, I'm going to be updating it as we go. So this is going to change, and I'm going to show you guys what I have next week based off of the time that we're going to utilize today to start thinking about these things and start thinking about how we want to prioritize our schedule. So we're going to have until next Wednesday to do the first iteration of our ideal month and our ideal week. And the next Wednesday, we're going to talk about it. So we're not going to do any talking today about how it works. I really want you guys to just spend the next half hour actively working on it. This is why you're here, so you can carve out the time to actually do it, because a lot of the time we don't make the time. So we're going to make the time and we're going to do it. So what you can do is, if you're going to utilize your Google Calendar, which we'll go through next week, is you can actually put in what tasks are that you want to work with. So on my free day, I had spend time with my daughter, make sure I was on top of my daughter's father in case she wasn't available for childcare, but I really tried to prioritize me. And Wednesdays, I even prioritized myself over my kid. Like I would spend time with Raina, but if her father was available, I took advantage of that. Then Thursday, so I always have a magnificent morning, which is time with Raina. I have my coffee. At the time, I was living with my best friend, so hanging out with my best friend and feeding Raina if necessary. So that means like breastfeeding because I'm still breastfeeding. Then we would have breakfast, which breakfast is breakfast. Everyone who's there, whoever is around. And then from 9 to 12, I called WD expansion. So that's what's changed in my schedule specifically because since I did this, I've actually had a lot of changes in my business. So I'm no longer just Wildly Digital. There's also Simon Marcus that I was involved in what I do. So I have a very different schedule than I used to. But I could still use this. I've still been able to utilize this momentum into where I'm at now. It's just now I know what my routine is, so it's time for me to change it again. So I would have some instructions for myself, like work with Kate on tasks needed to move Wildly Digital forward. I am also no longer partnered with Kate. We're still best friends, but we are no longer partners in Wildly Digital. So that has also changed. Implement new skills and processes into Wildly Digital, review client needs, their successes, and write out personal content for Wildly Digital, time for client meetings as needed. So again, that goes back to my monthly structure. If I had clients in those timeframes, I scheduled those. So then what changes with that is that I schedule all of my client meetings into my Wildly Digital calendar. So this is my Wildly Digital calendar, which then if you add in my calendar behind it, because you can layer your calendars, then you can see that the time that I spend working, even though this schedule I made almost 2 years ago when Raina was first born, I haven't strayed from it. It has become a part of my DNA. Like I do not go outside of these times. Yeah, sure, in the evenings I might answer a meeting or two, but if you look at it, you don't see any meetings outside of the time that I already have allocated for work. Right? Because I'm prioritizing myself. Now, the orange is Simon. So that is why Simon is here on this call to work on it and to get better at it because there's so much that we can do when we're managing our time effectively. And that's why it's important to pay attention to this on a monthly, weekly, daily, quarterly, yearly basis because we're evolving, but having a solid foundation and structure, which is the purple behind the blue, and we'll take off the green or the orange for a second, just so you can just see the blue, because that's really me. The purple behind the blue is, the purple is me, and the blue is what moves me forward, is what I do for my business. But the purple is what I have worked so hard to fine tune for myself. And what I noticed probably about, I don't know, let's say 3.5, 4 years ago, was that without having this solid purple foundation, my business wasn't thriving. I wasn't getting clients. I wasn't making the money that I wanted to be making. I wasn't prioritizing the work that I needed to do. And I always felt overwhelmed. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't waking up on time. There would be days where I wouldn't wake up until like noon, which when you don't have a kid works. And once you have kids, it doesn't really work anymore. So that's why I found and why I created the ideal planning process so that you can too have this freedom within your life where your business doesn't have to run you. You get to run your business. So I'm going to put the template into the chat. Before we get started on doing some active work on it, does anybody have any questions or insights or ahas of what I just said?
How would you plan when you can't control some things? For example, when in your family time, they are not eating at the same time, but you still want to join them. So sometimes they wake up at 6 in the morning, sometimes they wake up at 11 in the morning. So this is like a bit challenging to really structuring.
So does this happen usually like on the weekends when you're actually at home? Because I know
No.
you work from the office
This happens
as well.
every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this situation, this is something where you have to make your plan first and then communicate with your partner. So let's say, for example, because that's how kids are. Like my daughter woke up this morning at like 4 a.m. and she was just could not get her to go back to sleep. Like she would not go back to sleep. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to be at the office at 8:30. What am I going to do? I was spiraling while I was laying in bed. But that's what happens when we have children, is that like children are a totally different calendar than we are. Their brains are evolving, right? And then for your partner has their own life. So this is where by you saying, hey, I want to be with you while you're having breakfast. And I know some days you have breakfast at 6 and some days you guys don't wake up until 11. So how can I be available for you while still being able to maintain my calendar? And if your partner's like, well, I can't control it, I can't do anything for you, you can give yourself an alternative. So you can set up in your weekly structure. I don't have this in the template necessarily, but I have used it in the past where I give myself 2 options. So let me see if I still have it in here. It's in an older version. Hang on, let's go back to, how can I go back? Sorry, guys. I want to change the year. You change the year. Seriously? Okay, it's not working, but that's okay. I'll just explain it. So you can have 2 versions of your schedule. You can have a version which is like your working from home schedule, and you can have a in the office schedule. So your working from home schedule can have more flexibility. So if your mornings when you're working from home, now if you have a meeting, you have a meeting, you can't change that. But if you decide to work from home, you can make your mornings go with the flow. So you just would block off that entire morning in your work from home days as go with the flow, which allows meetings to come when meetings need to come, or allows you to go with the ebb and flows of the routine that you have with your family. So so when you're doing your daily planning, if you have a go with the flow section, you're still writing down what your top 3 to-dos are for the day. So then if your family is already awake and they've already had breakfast and you need to have breakfast, then you have breakfast, but then when they're having lunch, you make sure you're there for them with lunch. And you make that decision on a daily basis because you have the go with the flow time. And then in your daily planning, which we'll get into a little bit more as we move through the process, but that day-to-day routine structure is you take a look at what your to-dos are, you take a look at the schedule that you have in place. And if you're working from home, knowing that you want to have more of a go with the flow structure to it, reorganize your time blocks to fit the structure of your home environment. Does that make sense?
So going with the flow is when they're waking up at 9, taking them and say, let's have breakfast now, because we still have time until 10. And when they're waking up at 6, then we're having breakfast more early, or because that's the thing, like they're waking up. I don't know who really say when people need to wake up. It's like a bit strange, but this is like in the Dominican, like it's very challenging to plan something in the family time because, yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. And it's actually something that I found really useful for myself living in the Dominican as well, is using that go with the flow mindset. Because that's the thing, is that go with the flow and get your shit together are a mindset shift. That's all it is it doesn't feel like you're structured into, okay, this is my time to work on content, or this is my time to build a handbook. You allow yourself to be like, okay, I'm going with the flow. I know I have to do content today. I have to do the handbook, and I know I have a meeting. The only thing that I can't change is this meeting because it's pre-scheduled, but I can move the time blocks around within my day-to-day to fit what's happening with my family, because my family is following a different structure. So that's what you may find, that you're similar to the client that I have, where she had a lot of like just open blank spots where she used those mostly on a day-to-day basis to make decisions. She could not wrap her mind around, I have to be structured on a daily basis. Now, I know you, so I know that there is more structure that you're going to have, but I think that's where having a working from home structure and then an in the office structure is going to help you. And the other thing that might be helpful for you as well
Yep.
is scheduling in one day a week that you schedule to work from home. Instead of it always being a day-to-day decision, it's like there's one day a week that your wife knows you're going to be working from home. So that she's prepared for that. She's excited about that. She can, you'll also notice that by following more of a structured routine, your partner will react to that. And so will your kid, because kids love structure. Kids thrive in routine. As much as they're like, no, I don't want to do it, they actually get a lot of value out of it. So the more structure they have, the better their outcomes are.
So planning a work from home
Yeah.
day. But is it necessary to have one? Because I'm usually working from home when I'm not feeling well, or when I can't really go away from the home. Like I'm not just normally say I'm working from home.
So why don't you, for now, because we still have a few more minutes and I want to make sure we have some time to actually work on it, why don't you plan it for what feels best for you? Because yeah, you don't have to do a work from home day, but if you're finding that your family has their own structure, their own routine, which is more chaotic, then it might help you to feel more involved in their structure that they have, as loose as it is, if you're consciously making the decision to be there once a week versus going based off of how you're feeling internally. Because we're always allowed to have days where we don't feel well. But if you're not, and also knowing that it's important for you and your family that you are at home a little bit more, that you make that a priority. I think the biggest thing for you, Simon, is doing one free day a week where you don't touch your computer. Like fully taking that day off. I can't stress that hard enough. At least one day a week, and this goes for everybody, needs to be a free day. It's not a want, it's not a could be. It is a non-negotiable priority to give yourself that one free day where you
But
don't touch your calendar.
one day is a lot. Like can say, okay,
I know. But I encourage you and challenge you to do it.
okay.
And then this is the whole thing about it, right? Is that this is an ongoing process. So I encourage you to just trust me. Let's just give it a go. If you come back to me in 6 weeks and you're like, no, I can't do this, we'll talk about it. But I have a very strong suspicion that it's going to drastically evolve your life by you taking one full day where you just allow your brain to be free. A lot of cool things can happen out of it. Okay, so it's 12:45 now. I'm putting the link to the template in the chat. I know, Simon, you already have it. But for Patty and for Kat. So just take a second, sit with it, start to read through it. If any ideas come up right away, write them down in your template. Start to think about what things are important to you, and let's spend 10 minutes, because that's what we have, really sitting with it and kind of thinking about, okay, what do I want this routine and structure to look like to me? What are the tasks that I have every single week that don't change? Open up your work calendar if you have one and take a look at what your work calendar looks like right now. And then we'll come back in 10 minutes and we'll spend the last 5 minutes with just closing off. And if there are any other questions that come up, we can talk about them quickly. And then this week, that is your task. We're going to put together our ideal month. Your ideal week doesn't have to be perfect by next week, but our ideal month is what we're going to complete by next Wednesday. So let's take 10 minutes, review it, sit with it, absorb it, and then we'll come back and chat about it. And the link is in the Google chat. In the bottom right-hand corner, there should be a little eye icon, then a little person icon, and then beside that, it should say chat with everyone. Oh, you're on your phone. Yes, in the 3 dots. You see it? Perfect. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left. So does anyone have any questions or comments now that they've been able to sit with the template for a couple of minutes before we hop off?
You said you would review hours, or what do you do?
So yeah, so next week we're going to go through
Next week, okay.
Yeah. So this week it's just about building it. So I think you're a little bit ahead of the game, Simon, because I gave it to you a couple days early. But yeah, so we're going to spend this week finishing it. Well, putting it together. So like taking a look at what you have as priorities, just sitting with it and getting comfortable, because like for me to ask you to like have it all done in this session is just unrealistic. And it doesn't necessarily mean that next week it's going to be perfect either. So, but what I'm encouraging you to do is spend time focusing on it. Think about it, see how your week is functioning right now. Because every day you might come up with something new. Oh, I need to make sure I have time for my morning routine. Oh, I need to make sure I'm spending time at the end of the day reading. That's something that's going to be important to me. Or I always feel like I go to bed at like 1 a.m. I really should stop doing that. You know, like those kind of thoughts are what are going to start to come up now that we're being aware of our schedule. So then next Wednesday, we're going to take a look at what we've put together for our ideal month. And then we're going to start really focusing on our ideal weeks and our ideal days. If you get it all done, fantastic. But for those who need a little bit more time, excuse me, this week is just about formulating what an ideal month looks like to you. So to reiterate the important things is prioritizing time as the instructions say for what are your working days, what are your admin days, and most importantly, when is your free time? What are your planning weeks versus your execution weeks? What days of the week are you taking as free time, whether that's 1, 2, maybe 3, if you're really lucky, or maybe it's even in your dream to have 5 days. I don't know. Everything is totally okay, whatever lifestyle you want to have. What are your priorities? What are your non-negotiables? And outlining the 3 big tasks you want to get done on a daily basis, which includes monthly planning, mid-month planning, end of the month review, focusing on your finances, having times for meetings with clients, having strategic time for yourself. Immerse yourself in what I have as examples in the template and allow that to soak into what resonates with you for your life. Any other questions before we hop off? Okay, fabulous. Well, good luck. If you need me or you're really feeling stuck, feel free to DM me on WhatsApp. You all have my number. If you don't have my number and you're watching the YouTube video, just hop on to Dan's community and you can find my name there. I'm happy to connect and talk with you if you need it. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks for joining today, and we'll see you next week.